Hello, 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 everybody, and welcome to Celebrate with L.A. Williams. My name is L.A. Williams, and I am in deep gratitude and reverence, and I am so excited to be celebrating the one and only Mr. Jesse Cameron Alick. Jesse, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing beautiful. I'm doing even better for being here with you.
Yes, I'm so excited, Jesse. Before I get into a deeper introduction of you, I want to talk a few seconds about what Celebrate is and what that means to me, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, of course.
So this series is a manifestation of a moment I had as a very young theater student. I was still a teenager. I was at Alabama State University, and I walked over to the theater building and saw a production they were doing of a play called Phaedra by Jean Racine, and it was directed by Dr. Tommy Stewart. And Jesse, it was that moment for me. It was that moment where I was like completely bitten by the bug. I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And of course, I had no understanding of what was happening. Cut to watching the show a few times over the weekend, I kept feeling this overwhelming need to like find the people involved in that production and say thank you to them. Thank you for inspiring me. Thank you for giving me something to like look to, all the things. And that was actually, when I think about it, the beginning of what Celebrate is now. Cut to a few years later, I'm living in New York City, and I have this truly divine inspiration to start this platform, this interview platform, where I sit down with some of those people whose work has really inspired me and ask them to, talk about their journey and some of the transformative moments in their life. And that was the beginning of Celebrate. Here we are 10 years later. I'm still having these conversations. I made a personal commitment to go out and see shows this past fall and just show up for my community and, celebrate and do all those things. And, I'm so glad I did. Jesse Cameron Alick. I am just so excited to be able to say these words to you in this space. You are particularly special to me and to my journey because, and I don't know if you know this, Jesse, but I had only been in New York City just a few short months, and I had connected with Kelly Nicole Gerard over at the Fire This Time Festival.
Yes,
and
Kelly.
Yes, exactly. Celebrate Kelly all day, every day.
Yes.
And I believe it was she who connected me with you to direct your 10-minute play called The Scorpion and the Fox.
Oh my God, you are bringing it back. Bringing it back. I love this, LA.
Oh my God. So that moment for me was kind of like that Phaedra moment I had in undergrad, because it was the first production experience I had as a very young director in New York City, not too long after leaving Alabama. And I got to work with you on this incredibly beautiful and poetic and deeply personal piece that I felt, when I look back and think about it, was absolutely speaking to all of us, and not all of us as a collective, but all of us as like our humanity and our healing. And it was a play about family. And I remember thinking, who is this person, this artist who is so brave and courageous and honest? And I remember so many things about that very quick and short process. And I just remember feeling really great about everything. And thank God for those incredible performers, Jarrett Joseph and Chauncey Gilbert, who blew it away. And also a moment of reverence for Christine Jean Chambers, who took this iconic photo of that production. I mean, Christine, playwright, genius, photographer, archivist, everything. Yes. She took a photo of that show that I sometimes will just go on my computer, look through old files and look at. And you wrote that piece, Jess. Get so emotional. I get so emotional. You wrote that piece. And again, you probably didn't know that was some little boy from Alabama, my first time, and it was also a critical moment for me, Jesse, because I had come from working on mostly classics.
Right.
And Phaedras and Shakespeare's. And so new plays and what it meant to be in a room with a playwright, all of that was very, very new to me. And I had a wonderful experience, and I have you to thank for that. And I wanted to say thank you for all of that history. Thank you for that inspiration. Thank you for that piece that you gave us. And also I wanted to say congratulations on becoming the new associate artistic director of Vineyard Theatre. I mean, there's so much that we're going to celebrate, and I want to make sure we talk about, but that's my introduction. And I just wanted to say thank you, Jesse. And I love you. And I always will honor you for all of those things and beyond.
LA, I love that you start with that and you bring back, because that was a while ago. We won't name the
Why? We
years,
won't take,
but
we
that
won't
was,
do it.
because like at that time I was a playwright, predominantly, and I was just starting dramaturgy and stuff, and then flash forward to many years, I'm now, I'm a dramaturg and a producer and stuff. I do playwriting on the side. I work on projects still, but that piece was really meaningful to me too, because it was about my father, and you just did such wonderful things. The play was in such good hands. I
Thank you,
remember it
Jesse.
fondly.
Thank you, Jesse. I appreciate that. The way I like to start these Celebrate conversations off is by celebrating the day you were born. And that is meant to have you take us back however far you want us to go, to wherever you want us to go. Talk to us about your birth story, your earliest memory, young childhood, anything you want us to know.
How interesting. Okay. Let's go back in time then, shall we? Let's see. I was born November 2nd, 1981. And that is an interesting, number one, November 2nd is like kind of the Spanish Day of the Dead, and so like that's an interesting sort of thing in my life. And I was born in Missoula, Montana. So that's way out west, way out west, cowboy country. But my family is West Indian from Grenada. And so in my sort of life, I grew up in a Black home that was Black and African American, but specifically West Indian American too. And going back to Grenada a lot, and I'm a citizen of Grenada, and that sort of environment in Montana, which is a very white space. I don't know if you've read about Montana in books.
I mean, I've heard, yeah.
Yeah, you've heard. It's a very sort of white space. There's like a large Native American population, but there's not a lot of Black people. I think it's half of 1%, and so like growing up and like, being a small child, what I learned about Black culture, like came from my family. It came from all the people around me, and my mother telling me these lessons, and my father telling me these lessons, and my aunts and uncles at the big family reunions that I had talking to me this lessons about what it is to be a Black man and live in this body and move through the world. And of course, in Montana, you get your PhD at being Black and white spaces. I know white people. But like, that's sort of like where I was born, and the cocoon that I sprung out of. Also, it's just worth saying, just a shout out to my family. All my family are artists. My dad, Claudius Cameron Alick, he's a novelist. My sister, Claudia Alick, she's a producer, a theater producer, and a writer and a poet, and a theater creator in general. My uncle is a playwright in Grenada. Also, he's like the poet laureate of Grenada. There's lots of musicians. My sister, McKenna Lyric Alick, is a musician also. So there's a lot of creativity. It was a very creative home also.
Wow. Thank you for that. I was going to ask you to talk a little bit about what it was like growing up in your household. How many siblings did you have? Were you the only artist? But clearly you just answered that question.
Yeah.
Gosh,
I've got a lot of siblings though. Lots of siblings. I've got 6 brothers and sisters. There's a lot.
Are you like the oldest, youngest, middle child?
Well, they're West Indian, so like they had like the kids. My oldest sibling is 51. My youngest sibling is 19. So like I was born kind of in the middle of that, and there was some time before the other younger siblings came.
Yeah. Jesse, how early did you realize that A, you were in a house full of other artists, and B, that you were one of those artists? Like, was there a moment in your very young life where you were like, I'm clearly an artist, or I live in a house, or did you not realize that until much later on?
Well, it's interesting, like I'm growing up in a house with a lot of sort of artistic personalities. It means that everyone's got a project. Everyone's got a project all the time, and they're working on different projects. My dad specifically was he's a novelist. He still is a novelist, and he's living still. But like he I remember walking up to his desk as a kid a lot and being like, "Dad, let's play. Let's do something." Blah blah blah. And he'd be like, "Boy, can't you see I'm writing? Can't you say I'm writing?" Which was like always when I was a kid, I couldn't understand that. I was just like, "Oh, that's so annoying. Why are you writing?" And of course, as I've gotten older and become a writer myself, I'm like, "Oh, I see.
I see exactly what that was.
Right. I need to sit at this desk and think about things, but I didn't understand it as a kid. And even like I would say that like all the sort of different projects and stuff, at a certain point, I got a little annoyed with it. And when I was 13, I decided I wasn't going to go into the arts. I was going to be a lawyer. And in school I studied Latin, and I did law classes, at the local university when I was in high school. And I had this idea of what being a lawyer would be like. And then I remember a lawyer came in to this law class that I was taking, and he was talking about his day. Oh, this. I remember I was sitting there. I must have been like 15 or something. I was like, wow, I did not think it would be that much paperwork. I thought it was all like stand up and I object, Your Honor, blah, 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 blah. But as it turns out, I just wanted to do the performance.
Yes, the performance.
I wanted the drama.
Right. Yeah, the drama.
Yeah, and so then I ended up actually going into the theater. You know, I got pulled into the theater.
Yeah, exactly.
Into writing. But my family is, of course, I'm in a very sort of blessed situation in my family because my family gets it. They get that I'm just like, hey, I'm working on a project. I can't call you right now. Or I'm in tech, you know, I'm saying I'm in tech. My family gets what that means very much so, you know. So it's really lovely being in my family with all the artists and stuff. There's a lot of at Thanksgiving when we're talking about all the projects, it's a lot of projects, man.
A lot of projects. I love that, Jesse. I love that so much. So I can't imagine, first of all, living in a house like with people having artistic projects going on all the time. I think that's amazing. Did you go to like a performing arts school? Like, was there, what kind of outside support? I guess I'm curious about outside of the house now. What kind of outside support or resources did you have as a young artist? And also I want to hear you talk a little bit more about Montana, just that environment, you know, outside the house, like what that area is like for us.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I'll say so as a sort of young person before 17, like Montana is poor. You know, it's very poor. And so there's not a lot of resources. There's not like art schools. Like I hear, like in New York City, you hear about these people who went to arts high school where they have like poetry classes and all this sort of thing. Exactly. It's amazing. And I'm thankful for all of them, but that's not what it's like in Montana. You know, we were really lucky to have theater class. And so theater class was my only sort of outlet to, you know, learning about the sort of world of theater. So I got into theater classes and like Thespian Club, which was an after school sort of program. And I was the assistant director on law plays in high school. And that's sort of how I learned. And like, you know, I will also say I read a lot. Like in Montana, if you want to know something, you have to pursue that knowledge yourself. And that's also, I will say, you know, just to tie in Blackness, because I'm talking about Blackness today, I've decided. But learning about Blackness, you know, I had my parents, you know, but then oftentimes my parents would be like, here's a book, you know, and like, and I read it. And that's how I first read, you know, the autobiography of Malcolm X when I was 13, and and it totally radicalized me. I was like, white people are the devil, they're the devil. But like Malcolm took me on that journey in the book himself, and it was a really good journey. And that's how I first started reading, you know, like poetry by Maya Angelou or Nikki Giovanni. And that's how I first read The Fire This Time, you know, James Baldwin, you know, The Fire Next Time, sorry. The Fire This Time is the Fire Next Time. And oh my goodness, you know, like James Baldwin and his writing, I started reading his novels and stuff, and it just unfolded this world of Blackness and this world of sort of queer Blackness also, and these questions of identity that James Baldwin puts in front of us, you know, this like created, manufactured identity that America has like put us in, and how do we live? How do we survive in this? And also, like, I just remember James Baldwin talking about what the world has done to my brother, what the world has done to my father, and seeing that and being like, this is in his letter to his nephew, one of the essays they wrote, and being like, I don't want the world to do that to you. You know, you need to learn to live in the world. And I felt like he was talking to me. He was talking to me. He was like my, you know, my older Black mentor that I never had. And so that was like a really big, important part of Montana. I mean, Montana's also like, it's the woods. You know, there's like mountains, there's like grizzly bears, there's literal grizzly bears, mountain lions, there's elk, there's deer, you know, there's a lot of time in the wilderness. Yeah.
Wow.
I can ride a horse. I can shoot a shotgun.
Yes. Jesse, tell me really quickly, sorry, this just popped in my head. How did your family, or how do Black folks end up in Montana?
They don't. I mean, like I would say that there is a history of Black cowboys, of course, in this country that has actually has been hidden and not shown. You know, we see all these westerns, you know, with these white folks on horses, but there were Black people on horses too, you know, and so there is a history of that, and that's how a lot of Black people got to the locations. But that's not the story of my family, because my family is from Grenada. My dad left Grenada when he was 19, and then moved to the United States up to Maine because he was a sailor, and he moved up to Maine. Then he worked as a mechanic. Then he moved to Memphis, where he met my mother and went to economics school. And then there is a mystery. And then somehow my mom and my dad had a conversation, and then they moved to Montana. What is that? You know, and if you ask different people in the family, they'll tell you different
stories. Exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, everyone loves to tell a story, but none of the stories line up. You know.
Oh my God! Exactly. So they never line up. Yeah. I love that, Jesse. You know, the other thing that really resonates from what you just said is how you built these sort of deeply intimate relationships and mentorships, even with these Black writers like James Baldwin. I love that through reading, right? And I think that's so beautiful and profound, even, you know, how we do that and how necessary that kind of access is, you know what I mean? Which basically is saying no matter where you are, you can find a way in, kind of thing, you know. I love that so much. So high school, boom, boom, boom. Adolescence. Let's talk a little bit about adolescence, teenage years, and then moving into like how you finished, if you finished high school, what happened after that era.
I mean, like, adolescence was a time of rebellion, as any good teenager should, you know, have a time of rebellion. And I was extremely political, you know, in terms of, like, you know, racial justice in high school in Montana, as you can, and you can imagine how that went. I was also, I founded the first gay straight alliance in Montana, actually, you know. I've got like a plaque in my bathroom, I think, about that. And so I was really sort of political and trying to, like, you know, make changes, going to marches and stuff. I was working with Planned Parenthood, and my family just wished that I would be a little bit more quiet. You know, there was a tension there, you know, because they were just like they were like, Jesse, as like a Black boy in Montana, you know, you're bringing a lot of attention to yourself, you know, and I was frustrated by that criticism. I was really frustrated by that criticism, and me and my dad especially, you know, we had such tension between us. I mean, I feel like I am, like, right now describing, you know, the scorpion and the fox.
Exactly. Of course, that's right. I know.
So, like, throwback. But we had a lot of tension between the two of us, you know. And my dad, you know, a very sort of literary man, a very novelist mind, you know, would try and, like, connect with me, and had a lot of hard time doing it. And so my dad and I communicated through letters. For about a year, we didn't speak to each other, and we wrote letters to each other. And we'd leave the letters on the kitchen table, and then we'd pick it up, read it. About a week later, someone else would have a letter, and we'd just switch these letters back and forth, you know, really arguing, you know, and confessing things to each other too about how we felt. And it was like, it was a beautiful way. It was actually a really beautiful way to communicate. And we said a lot and came to really good terms. And then, and so I graduated high school a year early. So at 17, and then, like, me and my dad had our what is our final conflict, you know. I call it our final conflict because it was a gate that we passed through, and the conflict was, I decided I was going to move to New York City without a plan, you know, no plan. I was like, I'm moving to New York City, I'm going to work in the theater. And my dad was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. You know, you can't do that. You need to stay in Montana until you're 18. You need to, you know, go to school and do all of this. And like, I don't know what possessed me, you know, but I was like, no, I'm going to do this thing. You need to let me do this thing. And we came to such conflict about it. And then my dad, through some sort of grace, I do have to say, was like, okay, I'm going to let you go. Which he didn't have to do, you know. I was a minor, and he was like, I'm going to let you go and let you figure this out. And so I moved to New York City when I was 17 to work in the theater without a plan, you know. And, like, it is just like, I think about it. It's like, you know, I you know, I meet young people. I work with sort of young people, and sometimes I teach, and I, like, you know, young people in the city. I'm just like, oh, I have such a desire to take care of them, because I remember myself, and I didn't know up from down. LA, I was like, I was green as the spring from Montana, living in New York City. What was I doing?
17, 18. Oh my God.
And also, this was 1999, you know, this was 1999. And, like, and I just say that because, like, you know, New York City was not the New York City of today, you know, or the New York, or let's say the New York City of pre-pandemic, because I think New York City has changed, you know.
That's right.
During this pandemic, but, like, it wasn't the New York City of, like, 2018,
right?
Gentrified and relatively safe. It was actually kind of rough. Like, I hung out in Hell's Kitchen a lot. And, I got scared in Hell's Kitchen. It was rough.
Wow. Jesse, there's so much in what you just said that is vibrating through me, and I'm so thankful that you're sharing all this. The one or two things I want to tease out, or just sort of comment on. First of all, the fact that y'all communicated through letters is so wildly beautiful. And there's something even spiritual about that. And there's just something about that that's, like, in me that I can't shake right now, that I love. And thank you for that. And yes, the scorpion and the fox just is swirling around my life right now in my mind. The other thing I want to point out is I just love that you talk about that grace from your dad, and somehow, and I guess I just wonder if you have a thought on where that came from, right? Was it this sort of other thing, this other knowing that he might have had that was like, okay, this makes sense for this person? Or was it just like fatigue? And I also just love that you talk about the final conflict, but I'm just curious, like, because this space to me is not just about all the other things. It's also about sort of the divine and the sacred. And I'm always curious, like just wondering if you think there was any of that at play with your father in terms of letting you go to New York City.
I think that something happened. I literally, I remember the moment because we were in a car. And there's this Cat Stevens, he's like a sort of folk musician from the 60s and 70s. This Cat Stevens song, Father and Son, came on playing. We had been arguing, and when we talked in real life, like the letters were a tool that we used, because when we talked in real life, it would end with F you, old man, it would be like, boom, and we couldn't communicate, but we were arguing in the car, because that's where my dad would trap me to. When he wanted to talk to me, we'd go for a drive, and I'd be like, let me out. And we'd arguing, you're not going, I am going, and then silence, and then Father and Son came on, which is a song about fathers and sons. And this thing happened, which I don't know, I can't describe. It was this moment of listening to the song, and there was a transformation that happened in the song. Now this, this is interesting because this is spiritual, and like if you had put this on stage, if you put this scene on stage and the transformation happened, a lot of dramaturgs would be like, I don't get it, you should make the conflict more apparent. But conflicts in life sometimes happen inside, and like, yes, sir, because something happened in my dad, and I think that he went into the past. I think that because my dad left Grenada, he left his entire country when he was 19. He got on a boat and he sailed to Maine, of all places, and then moved to Memphis. He was like an immigrant. He was a foreigner in a strange land. And I think that he went back in time, and I think he accessed whatever that was. And I can't say what that was, that thing that happened to him in his homeland that told him to leave. I think he accessed that, and I think that he mapped it onto us. And he was like, oh, I think I see.
Jesse!
I know.
Jesse! Oh my God. That's so beautiful.
It's time travel too.
It's time travel. It's time travel. Okay, all right. I'm about to like nerd out. I love it, Jesse. No, thank you for that. I'm so impressed at how you were able to like tap into that, and like, I don't know, that's just amazing. So New York City, the other thing that popped in my head when you talked about, this wasn't 2018 New York City, but this also wasn't life after 9/11 New York City. So this is before, right? So I'm curious to hear you talk a little bit more about landing in 1999 New York City, as a 17, 18-year-old kid. What was it like? You say you came here to work in the theater. Yep. What was that first sort of moment or experience or rejection or opportunity even?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll say that I didn't know how to take care of myself. I'll just say that. I'll just be really honest about that. Like, Montana is a very poor place, and therefore things are cheap. So I brought $250, and I was like, that'll last me for a couple months. And I was just like, I'll eat quesadillas and cereal. And then I went to the store and I saw cereal, and cereal was $5. And in Montana, it's 99 cents. And then suddenly in the cereal aisle, I was like, I can't survive. This is my first week. I was like, I can't survive here. I have totally miscalculated money. And so I bought carrots. I ate, because carrots were 99 cents. I ate carrots for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for like 3 weeks. And so I was on unstable ground. I was living in a residential hotel on the Upper West Side. When I will say the Upper West Side was weird and dodgy. Also in 1999. There were weird patches of the Upper West Side. I was living in a residential hotel there. And then I went to a theater because I heard that they were looking for a spotlight operator. And so I went to the theater, and I just needed a job. This was like this wasn't even about Jesse career in the theater, although I was like, maybe I can get a job in the theater. But I needed money. And so I went to this theater, and I talked to the production manager, literally knocking on his door. I was like, hey, I hear you're looking for a spotlight operator. Not even a resume in my hand. Oh, I just think about 17-year-old Jesse. And so I was like, here, you're looking for a spotlight operator. And so he introduced me to the woman who was hiring for it. And I remember she was like, have you ever operated a spotlight? And I was like, no, but give me a chance and I won't mess this up. And that has become a headline of my life in the sort of theater, is like, give me a chance and I won't mess this up, because I didn't go to school. I just learned everything. Everything I know, I learned. And so she taught me how to use a spotlight, you know, and I was in the little booth, you know, a little tall booth behind the spotlight. I spent many hours behind that, hiding behind that. And that's also how I saw all my first New York City theater, from very high
up in the booth.
Totally, seeing down and following actors and looking at actors' performances after performance after performance after performance, seeing them doing the same thing and seeing the little nuances and stuff. And also just like, I will say, just falling in love with work, you know, falling in love. It was mostly musicals, and falling in love with like the actors and the ideas and the songs. And some of the songs, there's still some songs that I just think are just like completely beautiful that bring me back to that moment.
I love that. I understand that so much. Jesse, do you mind sharing where what was the space? What theater was this?
It's no longer there, but it was on the Upper West Side. Yeah, totally. A lot of theaters. It's worth saying that a lot of theaters over the years, you know, have closed down. You know, especially after 9/11, a ton of theaters closed down. You know, and then again in 2008, a ton of theaters closed down. You know, and turned into shoe shops or whatever. You know,
exactly.
But this was in the 70s on their
Gosh, wow, that's amazing. How long did you do the spotlight job, and what happened after that?
Let's see, I did the spotlight job for about a year, and then I needed more work. And so then at this theater, they also had people who would work lighting in general, and would get you up on tall ladders and you do cabling. You know, you're plugging in all the cables. It's grunt work for sure. You know, and you do this in the late night hours to get the work done before tech the next day. And so I did a lot of that. You know, I do spotlight in the evenings. And I do cabling also, you know, afterwards. And so I did all of that for about 2 years total. And that's how I really got my footing in New York City. Well, I mean, that's how I got my footing financially and stuff. And then I will also say that I met through doing that job. I was very shy because I was 17 from Montana. through that job, I met a whole bunch of actors, actors and singers. And I was really shy, and like they pursued me. They were like, Jesse, we're going to be friends. And they were older, you know, they were like 22. And they took care of me, LA. They would bring me over to their house. They would feed me dinner. You know, they'd show me all around the East Village on 8th Street when 8th Street was dodgy. There was like heroin addicts everywhere on 8th Street, you know, and they'd show me all the cheap places to eat on 8th Street, you know, where to like, you know, where the pizza was expensive, where the pizza was cheap. And I didn't know a thing. I remember the first time I had tabbouleh, because I never had tabbouleh. I was so ignorant. I was so ignorant from Montana. And I was just like, what is this tabbouleh? Oh my God. So they exposed me to everything. So like I made a lot of friends through having that job as well.
Oh my God, Jesse. Two tiny things that I'm present to. One question is, we talked about you being an artist and growing up in a house full of artists. I'm curious, like, what kind of artist did you identify as before you left home? Like, did you know, like, you were a writer, that kind of thing? And the other thing, before I forget it, I think I already have, so I'll let you answer that question. I've always written poetry. So I wrote a lot of poetry and stuff. And then I was an actor also. So when I moved to New York City, you know, the acting thing was really rough. And so like, you know, and it was difficult. And so I auditioned a little bit, but I didn't really understand how. But I did a lot of poetry, and I did a lot of poetry sort of in the slam poetry scene, you know, as well. And my sister moved to New York City like after I'd lived here for 2 or 3 years, and she was really big in the slam poetry scene. And so she kind of pulled me into the poetry scene, where I was like, oh, poetry is performance. And so like, so those are, you know, the sort of like, and also it's worth saying, I then there was a theater company that I started in my sort of early 20s. But it was really like the slam poetry scene. It was meeting these actors and these musicians through this job. And it was this theater company that started to really integrate me into the theater. And like I acted for a little while, for like literally like 9 months until I was like, I'm a writer. You know, I fully became a writer, I think, around by the time I was like 19, 20. What about the acting experience made you go, I'm a writer?
Two things. One, auditions. you know. Auditions were like terrifying for me and very, very difficult. If I could talk to me then, though, if I could talk to me then, I would have been like, Jesse, you're like, auditions are terrible for everyone, you know. They're the wrong way to do this thing, you know. You shouldn't let that scare you off from being an actor, you know. Just because you hate auditions and you're scared of auditions, you shouldn't let this scare you off. But I will say that I got cast in a you know, a few plays I was in, and I remember being in rehearsals for these plays and sitting there, and when I wasn't on stage, and I would be like sitting backstage, and I would be, you know, writing, you know, on a notepad, and then they'd be like, oh, Jesse, time to come on, you know. And I remember thinking, oh, that's so annoying. I really wanted to finish the thing I was writing. And like in rehearsals, I'd be like, gosh, oh God, what time is it? If I get home now, I think I can do a few more pages. So I was thinking about writing in rehearsals. And if you're an actor, being in rehearsals, that's the thing.
That's the thing.
That's the playground. You should be really excited. And I wasn't as excited about being in rehearsals.
Yeah. I love that you knew that, Jesse. So it sounds like, and I'm assuming here, you did not go to college.
No, I didn't go to college.
Oh, that's amazing.
I college, love
that.
No school.
Yeah, exactly. I love that so much. And I guess I want to hear you talk about, or not even talk about, but just comment on the fact that, like, I just love that, like, you educated yourself by being here in the city, by working the spotlight, by starting the company, all the things, and didn't have the sort of traditional education. And I guess, maybe there's a question. How do you think that has served you? Or not even, you know, on your journey?
Well, gosh, I'll say both. Yeah, it's a sword that cuts both ways for sure. And I remember, especially in my 20s, it was difficult because in my 20s, I was I'd be hanging out with all these other theater artists, and some of them would be in school, some of them would be graduated. I was working with them, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's very Brechtian," blah blah blah, and I'd be like 20 years old, I'd be like, what is Brechtian? Yeah, who is Brecht? And so what I would do is that I would go home, and then I'd be like, let me get some books. And then I would read Mother Courage and Good Person of Szechuan and read a whole bunch of other books on like what people said about Brecht. And so the next time I was in conversation, I'd be like, no, that's not Brechtian.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Brechtian is this. You know, and I'd be able to have that conversation. And so like piece by piece, being in conversations and not understanding what the conversation was about, that was an education for me, because then I would research and I would read things. This goes into being the dramaturg now. I would figure things out. I would educate myself, and it was a very active process. I saw in my 20s, especially as I sort of like became a playwright and then started to become a dramaturg and a producer, it was very difficult sometimes, because I would watch other people's careers go faster than mine. People would graduate from college, and then they would get the job that was higher than my job that I was applying for, because they had like, you know, they had a college degree, they had Yale on their resume, and all I had at that point, you know, when I was like 23 or 24, I had like 3 or 4 years doing theater in New York City.
Right,
you know?
right.
And that didn't add up necessarily to, you know, my experience didn't add up to their, you know, their college degree. And so that was tough. And that came with a lot of self-doubt. I would say there was a lot of like, Jesse, maybe you should have gone to college. Like maybe you should have, what is this path? Are you ever going to advance in your career? Are you going to be able to do the things that you want to do? And so it took like a lot of like, you know, there's a lot of self-doubt in my early 20s, and it was perseverance, you know, perseverance. And like, also I said yes to every single thing. You know, I have worked as an usher innumerable times. I've worked as a theater manager. I've rented out theater spaces and been the person that works for a theater to rent out theater spaces and show it to people. I've done tech sort of stuff. And like I just worked for so many off-Broadway theater companies in my 20s, because I was like, okay, Jesse, you don't understand enough about this. So what you need to do is that you need to learn. You know, and I learned on my feet. And I also saw a lot of shows. I saw a lot of plays. And if I couldn't get in for free, because I was also, of course, very poor, but like if I couldn't get in for free, I would usher for them. You know, I would like, you know, I would make it happen. And then I would talk to people. You know, I take people out for lots of coffees. You know, I'm doing exactly what you're doing right now. But like, I would chat with people and discuss things with them. And if I'd be like, oh, what are you reading? And they'd be like, oh, have you heard of this? Have you heard of this? I'd be like, cool, I'll write those down. I'll buy those books. But like, and I think that was really beneficial. It means that like now at the, you know, the hallowed age of 40, it means that my depth of knowledge about a lot of things, you know, I have a depth of knowledge about a lot of different things. I can talk to a set designer or a carpenter, you know, in detail, because I've done that work, you know, or a lighting designer, spotlight operator. I know the shutters. Like I can talk to you about a lot of different things. And so it's really like, but it took at least 10 years of like taking a vase and filling up filling up my cups, filling them all up. Yeah, it was my career has gone slower because of that. But I think it's been beneficial. Like I'm happy, I'm content with that decision that I made.
Jesse, I love this so much. I want to, in the spirit of celebration, let's just celebrate the fact that something in you knew at 17, finishing high school early, I'm going to New York City to do theater and I'm not going to college. I just love that something in you knew that that was the path. And I also want to celebrate the fact that like something in you also knew in that first 10 years of being in New York City, I've got to sit down with people. I've got to take notes. I've got to go look at the books and find out what Brechtian means. Like, I think it's important that we don't skip over that shit. It's not common sense. It is not common sense for people to know that it's important to sit down and talk to different people and take different types of jobs. It's not common sense because I talk to so many people who, because I should say that in my journey, it's been a lot of that as well. You know, like, let me just connect how I connect and do what I need to do and say yes to everything. A lot of people don't do that, Jesse. So I just want to celebrate the fact that you knew that somehow and you did that. And it clearly helped lead you to where you are today. So I just want to point that out.
Thank you, Ella. It's interesting because like I think you're right. There is some wisdom there, you know. And that,
absolutely.
I don't know where that wisdom came from. I don't know. Like this, you know, the impulse that you talked about at the beginning for, you know, you making this project here, you know, about like, you know, wanting to talk to people and connect with a certain people. That's very wise because the theater is not shows. It's not plays. The theater is not buildings. You know, the theater is people. It's human beings. You know, it's our relationships with the building. It's also human beings who aren't here anymore. The human beings in the past. It's also human beings in the future. You know, and there's a wisdom in being like, let me jam with people, let me talk with people and get advice. It's worth saying I got bad advice too. I remember some of the bad advice I got too. But it's good to mask good advice and bad advice.
God, I love that. For just indulge me for 2 seconds. Give me one piece of bad advice that you can remember that you're like, when I look at that on the journey, that kind of totally shifted things for good or bad or what have you.
I remember when I was like acting a little bit and I had started writing also. And I was interested in other things. I was just like, how do you work on plays? The dramaturg, how do you be a producer, blah, blah, blah. I remember I was with this older actor. He was probably about my age, actually, the age that I am now. He's probably, you know, in his 40s. And I was sort of talking. I was like, I'm doing this, but I'm thinking of doing this. I'm thinking of doing that. And I remember he's like, Jesse, you need to pick a lane and stay in it. You know, the world, the theater world wants to look at you in one way and you can't confuse them. You need to just do this or just do that. You know, I was like, oh, okay. And I remember like being like, gosh, that feels really restricting, you know, he's older, so he knows what he is. And like, in the end, I ended up not quite taking his advice, you know, and I'm glad. I think it's bad advice. I think it's advice of the past.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
Especially in the world that we live in now.
Yes.
We are a multi-hyphenate world.
Yes.
You know, exploit everything that you can do. Grow as you grow.
Exploit everything you can do. Yes. Grow as you grow. Oh, I love that, Jesse. Thank you for that. In moving forward, because you are so fucking wise, Jesse. And I've always, and in prepping for this morning, and this week, I was thinking about how I've always felt when I'm around you, this otherworldliness. I'm gonna just leave it there. I'm just gonna leave it there. I don't know, Jesse. I'm just gonna say it for the record. But moving forward, so you did all these different things and acquired all these different experiences and knowledge. When I met you, you were a playwright. You know, you were acting as a playwright. So I guess in moving towards that, I guess talk to us about what happened in the years prior to me meeting you at the Fire This Time Festival. What did you do in that interim?
Yeah. And when I say I was primarily playwright, yes, that's true. But I was also doing other things. So I was primarily so in my 20s, I started this theater company, subjective theater company, with a whole bunch of people I knew, a lot of these actors and stuff that that I met through the spotlight. So subjective theater company, and it did socio-political work. And I started with them. I acted for a little bit, and then I was their resident playwright for a couple of years, and then I became associate artistic director and then artistic director of that theater company, and started producing. You know, so in my sort of the middle of my 20s, I was producing a lot of theater, and then I was writing a lot of theater on the side, and then also I was working as at the Public Theater. I got a job at the Public Theater when I was 24, I think, and that was assistant to the artistic director. You know, and that job was like a lot. You know, it was desk work, it was scheduling, and all of that. But the artistic director, Oscar Eustace, over there, is a dramaturg primarily. You know, that's his greatest strength. And so I was learning a lot about dramaturgy and how to talk talk to artists and also how to produce that sort of thing. But I was really producing on my own, you know. So like I would say that playwriting was my biggest sort of artistic impulse at that time. But I was always sort of doing other things too, you know. I was doing a lot of side gigs, lots of side producing gigs at the same time I was a playwright, and also starting to interest myself in dramaturgy, which is like, what is dramaturgy? You know, because people define it differently, but it's the art of storytelling. And specifically, I would also say it's the art of talking to people about
yes.
Communicate. Yes.
The art of talking to people about stories. And story is I love that definition, because you're so right. There's so many different definitions of dramaturgy, and I love what you're saying. So am I right when I say, I hear you saying that it was dramaturgy as a profession or as a thing for you came about from your work at the Public, working under dramaturgs like Oscar? I love that.
Yeah, totally. Like I'm learning that sort of thing, you know. I'm learning, like, you know, or there's this tool, and then it's very much, and this is a very Jesse sort of thing, to learn something, you know. I learned the tool, oh, what's dramaturgy and stuff, and then I was producing all this work, and I was just an artistic director of the South Broadway Theater Company. I was like, well, let me use this, and then I started using that there and being like, oh, I see how I can work with artists and, like, you know, and lend them tools and help them work on their sort of projects. And so that really helped. And also, I will say, the greatest thing about working at the Public, you know, was that it introduced me to a lot of people. You know, I worked there for a really long time, for 16 years in total, and I met a lot of people. You know, met a lot of sort of different playwrights, as playwrights especially. I met directors and designers and stuff like that, but I do have a soft spot for writers.
For writers, yeah.
And I remember I met Susan Laurie Parks at the Public, and she has become like a great sort of, you know, mentor and then collaborator, and she's been like a real champion of me and my career. And I remember, like, things would happen, like Susan Laurie and I had a conversation. We were walking down the street because my theater company was we were doing some festival, and I wanted Susan Laurie to do something, which is like, you know, it's like Jesse. She's kind of famous, but whatever. I was walking down the street with her, and I decided to ask her, and I was like, hey, do you want to do something in my little dinky ass theater company? And she was just like, she's like, God, Jesse, I'm so busy right now. And she was just like, I just have so much writing to do. And she was like, I don't know, maybe, you know, you could get an audience together and I could just write on stage, you know, and they could just see me write. And that became her performance art piece, Watch Me Work, which she first did with my theater company and then moved over to the Public, you know. I worked on that for a number of years and like perfecting the sort of form that she has. She does it online now with a really big audience. She did it all through the pandemic. And so that was an interesting, like, those sort of moments of like being in conversation with an artist, an idea just like forming, and then making it happen, producing it and stuff.
Yes, Jesse. Yeah, because I was going to ask you, what is your definition of producing? But it's exactly right. Making it happen, making things happen is how I define it.
Yep, totally. And it's like dealing with all the details. I mean, I think that like there's a term, artistic producer, which is an interesting term. There's like, I mean, like the theater has no definitions for terms, you know, they're different at every theater, because there's being a line producer, you know, and not-for-profit theaters, which is you deal with all the details, you know, all the complicated details of tech and making sure designers are communicating with the production managers and all of that. Then there's artistic producer, which is looking at the big picture, looking at the artistic sort of things, you know, and the sort of producing details and making sure that it's all fitting within in the budget. And then commercial theater, the producers, you know, it's money, you know, it's like having the money and deciding where the money goes.
Exactly.
But it's important to actually know all of those things and be able to talk to someone. So if I'm talking to you about your play, Ellie, we can talk about, like, you know, in the third act, you want 12 dancers, but you also want a gigantic disco ball that explodes and confetti. And so like I can talk to you about that, and like it's like, great, first of all, let's talk about the dramaturgy, let's talk about the storytelling. You're looking for the fantastic, you're looking for something exploding wild, and it sounds like you can get that from the dancers, and you can get that from the exploding disco ball. And so, but dramaturgically, let's talk about what it needs. It feels like your world wants to be populated, so maybe looking at the budget, we can't afford both, so let's talk about that, the actors and stuff. Maybe we go with the dancers instead. So I can, that's a producer conversation, but it's an artistic conversation too. And that's how I would like to talk to people. I don't like to talk to people in like, just like, we don't have the money for it, or like, you know, your play needs to be shorter, or blah, blah, blah. These are not artistic. These are clinical notes.
The clinical notes. Yeah. Jesse, thank you for sharing the sort of genesis of Watch Me Work. and the kinds of relationships you were able to build and the projects you were able to start, at the Public Theater. So yeah, playwriting. Yeah, just thank you for The Scorpion and the Fox. What a beautiful, deeply almost philosophical piece when I think about it and when I look back at it now. And so I just want to celebrate the playwright that is you and in you. And I also want to we've already touched on it, thankfully. But I want to just also talk about the fact, or celebrate the fact, Jesse, that you, in your time at the Public Theater, were involved in things like Public Studio, the Emerging Writers Group. And what I mean by that is, like, it, from my view, you helped sort of shepherd and cultivate a lot of new playwrights and a lot of new plays and projects. And I just want to say thank you for that, Jesse. Thank you for your presence in the field and at the Public for all those years, and your work there and how much you served.
Thank you,
Jesse. How much you fucking served, because like and as I listen to your story, you've really built this whole thing from the ground up, really. And I think about your work at the Public, from starting as the artistic director's assistant and collecting all of this knowledge and these relationships, even to meeting all these people, specifically playwrights, like you said, and then creating pathways for their work to be seen and for us to get to know them. I mean, Jesse, anyway, I can go on, but thank you for that, brother.
No, but I really appreciate that, because the path of the Public, I was like the artistic director's assistant for a number of years, and then I was her artistic associate. I was later a manager, and then company dramaturg, and that was a long arc over the years.
Yes.
But you know what it taught me? It taught me this, the impulse of like being able to help people. Being able to help, being of use, being of service. There's a great joy in it. There's a great joy in me talking to you about your play and being like, great, here's some thoughts, and we reach epiphanies, and then I'm able to advocate for it and then get it on the stage, and like being able to achieve that is a great joy that I discovered. I discovered that, like, one, I get off on it. It brings me happiness, but also it's what the world wants of me. There's like, it feels like when I'm doing it, I'm like, this is the work. This is the work. This is what the world needs, and I'm doing something the world needs. Right
This is the work I was called to do, and the gifts I'm here to share. I love that. I love that. In the spirit of celebrating your time at the Public Theater, I guess I want to just ask you if there is, this is so almost unfair, but one moment or project or collaboration even that you're like, I'm so proud of.
Oh gosh. Yes, there is, but like, maybe I can like go through a few, because like, I mean, there's like, I remember my early days at the Public, I would just be softly involved in things. And even that was an honor. Like when Stu put up Passing Strange, I remember, and it was like a very sort of Black musical, Black artist musical. I remember being like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm working on something this important. This is so amazing, and then like, as I became more of a dramaturg, and working with the Emerging Writers Group, and developing that sort of work, it felt so important also. But I will say that like, the projects that have been like some of the most important projects for me are the ones that started with a human being, and we talked and we found a seed. And then together we planted the seed, and then we pulled the weeds, we watered it, we called upon the sun, and it grew into an actual production. So like, I would mention, Patricia Ione Lloyd, her play Eve Song that happened at the Public, like I was, she's an artist who I've always loved. And then she was in the Emerging Writers Group. And then I was with her every page she wrote. Every page we were reading and talking about it, and then she had another play in Public Studio, and we were working on that. And then Eve Song we decided to produce as a full production. I was there all through that, and so being there through that, the entire journey of a project, is inspirational. It's so inspirational. And then another one that I would actually just mention, because it's happening right now, is that for 10 years I worked with Mona Mansour. She's a Middle Eastern playwright, on the Vagrant trilogy, and the Vagrant trilogy is a trilogy of plays about this Palestinian man and him trying to find his place in the world. And it's 3 plays, it's a trilogy, and we worked on it for 10 years. And it was and Mona is such a joy to work with, you know, and like we worked, and we also had production in DC, and I dramaturged that, and we had all sorts of sessions. There were commissions, there was traveling, there's all sorts of things that built our relationship. And then in March 2020, we had rehearsed it, and we were in tech for it, and that's when the shutdown happened. That's when everything. After 10 years, we were on the 4th day of tech, girl. Like, and then we were just like, everyone go home for 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks turned into 2 years.
2 years,
you know, just like that.
Wow.
And the play is actually in previews right now at the Public Theater. You know,
yes.
And I'm still working on it because Mona hired me to be the dramaturg on it, and it's such satisfaction being like, I have been with 12 years now, you know, for such a long time. I'm working on this project, and it's such a joy, you know, and such satisfaction to be like, oh, look what we've done, you know, over this last decade. Look what we've done together.
Look what we've done. Thank you, Jesse, for sharing all of that juiciness, and thank you for your work at the Public Theater. And I know that you'll continue to contribute to everything. I'm conscious of the time. Before I jump to sort of our wrap up, I want to take a moment to celebrate and congratulate you on your shift from the Public Theater to your new role as the associate artistic director and artistic producer, or whatever that juiciness is, over at the Vineyard Theatre. It's all it's all of it. I want to just say thank you. And one thing in particular, Jesse, that I'm really interested in asking folks, particularly our leaders, people who lead these institutions and run, is how can we as a community support you and hold up you? You know, something I'm asking a lot of people, and really talk to us about that. How can we love on you and take care of you in this new role?
Yes. Listen, I will say that, like, you know, this kind of post-ish pandemic time, you know, that we're all in, there's a lot of sort of moving things around, leadership changes, you know, and everyone's trying to come back to the theater, and everyone is stumbling, and it's hard, you know. And it's also worth saying the last 2 years, there's a lot of sort of discussion, you know, about like, you know, about like the sort of equity in theater, or the lack of equity in theater, you know, and how we can make the theater world more fair for, you know, for Black people, for people of color, for all of us to sort of work in. And now we're stumbling. We're in this place of like, God, I've got to put this show together, and a lot of things can feel like they're getting lost, you know. And so I would say one of the greatest ways, you know, I'll name two things actually, in terms of support, you know. One is and I say this to all the artists out there, you know, all the creators, you know, keep on creating the work that you want to create, not the work that theaters want to create, you know, the work that you want to create, you know, keep on being experimental, keep on being multidisciplinary, like move us into the future, you know, because it is our jobs. And I said the leaders, you know, as leaders, we are also people who are in service. We are in service to you, you know, and that's how we should be. And it is our jobs to follow you. You know, as you stride forward into the future, it is our jobs to follow you, you know. So keep on, don't slow down, don't give us what we want, you know. Keep on going, you know. And then the second thing I would say is to everyone, and I say this, you know, not just like, I'm not just trying to target the white leaders out there, you know, but I'm very much targeting myself too, which is, don't take the pressure off of us. Don't take the pressure off. Hold our little toes to the fire on every single promise, on every single thing that we said that we would change. Because it's very easy for us to get distracted, you know, because we're like, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And listen, I'm doing the best I can, but like, oh my God, I've got this position, and this person needs notes, and oh my God, everything's closing in tech. So we get distracted and stuff. Keep the pressure on us. We made you promises, and we must live up to those promises. We must be held accountable, you know? And that is our relationship, you know. That is part of a good and healthy relationship that leadership should have, you know, with the community.
Jesse, yes, I love that. That's so profound. We need to hear that. Yes. In the spirit of lighthearted, I'm so full. In the spirit of lightheartedness and fun, I like to take a little moment in each conversation to just ask you what, and also getting to know you better. What are some of your favorite things? What are the things that make you happy? What's your favorite song, your favorite food, your favorite city, anything?
Oh gosh, let's see. Things that make me happy, and especially I will say like over the pandemic, but this is always science fiction. I'm a big sci-fi dork. It is like an important, if there's two important things in my life, it's theater and science fiction. If you got a theater or science fiction project, hit me up.
Hit me up.
Like it has like, it has been so wonderful imagining different worlds, imagining how we exist in the future, because like science fiction is an optimistic form because it imagines the future and it imagines that we made it. We're there. We might be getting by robots, but we're there.
We're there.
That's why also Afrofuturism is such an important kind of work, because it imagines Black people in the future. And imagining us and our struggle 100 years from now, 200 years from now, that is important work, and it gives me hope. I read all you can't see it in my office because it's right behind me, but like I have a comic book section over here, and then I have a sci-fi section over here, and it's populated with Frank Herbert and N.K. Jemisin and Octavia Butler, and like all the sort of work that makes me be like, oh my God, these are people who are imagining the future, imagining us in the future. What a blessing. What a blessing. So that makes me very happy.
Jesse, get off my phone. Get off my phone. No. Oh my God. Jesse, that's so fucking brilliant. Okay, listen. All right. That's so juicy. I love that. Oh my God. I like to wrap these conversations up. I can speak to you for the rest of my life. I like to wrap these up by asking 3 questions.
Okay.
What does it mean to you to be celebrated?
Gosh. I will say that it is a light shined upon me, and I think, as with a lot of people, my reaction to it is embarrassment at first, because I'm just like, oh no, I'm just doing the work, shine it on someone else over there, but I will say it is like, it is embarrassment that's also a blessing. It's like, oh my God, like, I'm out here trying to help and feeling loved. Because that's what being celebrated feels like. It feels like being loved, which feels like embarrassing, but it also feels really affirming too. It's just good. Like, thank you. I've been here in the mud for like 10 years now. I'm so glad you know this.
Yes. God, I love that. I love that so much, and I'm so glad that you feel the love of it all. What or who do you celebrate?
Oh gosh, what or who do I celebrate? We've been through hard times. I don't know if you noticed, but like, yes, we've been through some really, really hard times, and over the last 2 years, we'll say the last 2 years of this pandemic, I have often actually stumbled off the path and fallen into the bushes and cried. And there have been great, 2 groups of people, there have been great people who have pulled me out of the bushes, who have literally like called me and been like, you're in the bushes, let's get you back on the path. And those groups of people are the artists, that I sort of work with. There are like some really specific sort of like, some people, Karen Ann Daniels, who's the artistic director over at Folgers, Whitney White, who is the greatest living director on the planet. I think, and a lot of other sort of people who have like come to me with ideas, and they're like, hey, what if we did this? Let's do a project, Jesse. And that like, and being like, Jesse, let's do a project, has actually saved me very often. Been like, thank you. Yes, I'll work on that and look at me out. And then I gotta give a shout out to my New York City friends, my peeps here, have like held me down. Like in the time period when it has been hardest to be there for someone, people have showed up. People have done the great work of showing up, and showing up. Maybe this is text messages, maybe this is phone calls or Zooms or something like that. And sometimes it's in real life, which was even harder over the last 2 years. And I'm very grateful. They set me back on the path.
Hey. Who, Jesse, I love it. I love it so much. Thank you for that. Yes, thank you for that. And finally, what do you do to celebrate you?
What do I do to celebrate me? Wow. I think that like, and this is okay. Yeah, I got this. So I came to a realization over the last 2 years, that like, the most important thing for me, and that's something that's really, really necessary in my life, is to be happy. Like is to be happy, because I did not live a life where I was like, oh, let me try make myself happy. It was like, let me do this, let me do this, and like being happy is really, really important. And so I'm very focused on, you know, and this is career stuff, you know, but this is also social stuff, on doing things that make me happy, you know.
Yes.
And so this means like, you know, going out dancing, you know, with my friends. This means like, you know, going for long walks with people who I love to talk with, you know. This makes me happy, and I really and so to feed myself, to celebrate myself, I really am very focused on, oh, Jesse, how can you be happy though? And also using it as a rubric. Do you do this or do you do this? What's going to make you happy? What's going to make you happy?
Yes, for the rubric. Yes, for using it as a rubric.
Yes.
Jesse, I am so full and deep with gratitude, just that you have given me the opportunity to say thank you and to love on you and celebrate you in this way, in this space. Thank you. Clearly, I celebrate you. I love you, Jesse. It is not lost on me, your contribution to our field and our community. Every time I see you again, I feel this vibration from you. And I think a lot of it has to do with our history and how we met and all the things. I believe in you so much. I think I speak for so many of us when I say we believe in you. You matter to us. We feel like we matter to you. And Jesse, I'm just so grateful that we exist at the same time. And I'm extremely grateful that you've like given me a moment of your life to be like, let LA love on me in LA's way. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I love you too. And you are so generous. You know, I cannot express my gratitude. You're lovely.
Thank you. I'm just trying to give some of it back, all that I feel. You're amazing. Thank you for doing this. More soon, all the things. Love you. Take care. All the things.
Hey.
Awesome. Bye, Jesse.